All right. In this second video, we want to go ahead and look at childcare. Okay, so we're going to look at. I just want to use our model to look at some policies. So here is childcare costs. Okay, so we're going to look at what's the effect of childcare costs on labor force participation, and we're especially this is changing now, but especially for the past, the social norm has been that women are taking the primary role in with their children in most cases, and so it often ends up being, if there's some pressure or cost related to children, it's sort of seen as affecting women's labor supply more than men's labor supply. This is changing now. I can actually give a personal anecdote. Because in my family, at least currently, I'm sort of the one who has primary charge of things related to children on the weekdays, because my job is more flexible, and it has the childcare costs do actually make a difference. So I would actually take this into consideration when considering how many classes I was willing to teach in a semester, for example. Because if I could cut childcare down to 3 days a week, first of all, it'd be nice I spend more time with my kids. But secondly, it would also save quite a bit of money, and this might actually counterbalance to some extent the payment you get for those extra classes. So anyways, it's becoming more common for people in general, but I'm still going to model this as mostly looking at affecting women's labor force participation, mostly because that's still the majority of the situation. So how do we model it? So there's two ways to model. So you can look at it as an hourly pay, or you can model it as a lump sum, though, which is what we did actually earlier for the disability. So this is like a fixed cost. Okay, so so let's do it both ways. So say hourly pay is $5 an hour. Okay, so how's this going to work? Well, I'm not going to draw the indifference curve in this case. At least I don't plan to. So let's suppose let's start you here. We'll just do some random amount. And then let's suppose someone's wage was, before their wage is $15 an hour. Okay, so that's what I've drawn here. So this is $15 an hour. And then what happens? Well, sorry about that. When this hourly pays for the child care is $5 an hour. So what happens is this ends up shifting down this line. Okay, it shifts down. So before it was up there, and now it's down here, right? So this is minus the $5 per hour. So child care. So what ends up happening is, well, you have a lower wage now, and for some people it might not be worth it anymore to work. Let me see if I can. It's a little bit difficult to draw this, but let me see if I can. So like maybe the person was here. The person was here working, but then when they have a child, they end up not working. I drew it a little badly, but oh well. You get the idea. Try to make these parallel. Okay, there we go. That's better. Okay, so they were working here, right? They're working, and then after having a child, they quit working. Okay, so this will have an effect to some extent on people. Now, it's possible they might work more hours and keep their kid in childcare, but they work more hours than they did before. That's also possible. Okay, but we can say for some people, for some, now the wage after the childcare is too low. It doesn't meet the reservation wage. For some, they'll leave the labor force because the wage is now too low, right? So this is the idea. Okay, so that's one way to model it. We can do it that way. So raising childcare costs will tend to have an impact. The impact will be bigger the lower people's wages are compared to the childcare costs. So like, for example, if this person had been a minimum wage earner and childcare cost is $5 an hour, then they will definitely leave the market. right? Because they're basically taking all their money. But if this person was a highly paid executive and they're making $100 an hour and then childcare cost is $5 an hour, no big deal. It's not going to have any impact on them. So some will leave the labor force because the wage is too low now. And this will be mostly impacting people who are in the lower wage, lower skill sector of the economy. Okay, so now let's do it a fixed cost instead. And actually, a fixed cost is probably more realistic. Okay, so for example, I really don't know how much childcare costs are in Denver. In the area where I live, the childcare is roughly, give or take, like $100. It's roughly $800 a month. And it comes out in most places to close to $40 a day. Okay, somewhere like 37 or 38, but it's roughly $40 a day. So let's just round it off to $40 a day. So now it's going to look different, and this one's going to be weird, how I'm going to draw it. So what happens is you are here. There's money, and here's time. So this one is going to, if it's this kind of fixed cost, so let's suppose you can't choose to send your kid to childcare for 2 hours. It's either you send them all day or you don't send them at all. Okay. So for this problem, we're going to do it as a lump sum, and we're looking at as a lump sum. We have a fixed cost of $40 a day for childcare. Okay. So let's start with something first. Okay. Let's start with something. We're going to assume you have like $30 a day of unearned income. So that's going to be 30. And then you make $15 an hour. Okay, something like that. So how do we put this childcare cost in? All right, so so now you have $40 a day if you send your kid to childcare. So you don't send your kid to childcare, you're still here. Okay, you still can do this point. You can still get $30 a day. But if you send them to childcare, what happens? Well, you lose $40 the second you step out the door. Okay, so that puts you down here. And then your wage doesn't change. Your wage is now still $15 an hour, but the difference is you lost that first part the second you stepped out the door. So it will take you, let's see, 15, so 2 hours is 30. So it's going to take you almost 3 hours before you get back to where you started. Okay, so that's the kind of change here. So it actually doesn't change, in this case, it doesn't change your wage, but it is, it does shift you down. Okay, so it shifts down your whole curve. So in this case, you might have had somebody when they didn't have children, somebody who when they didn't have children, they were working, but now that they have kids, they are choosing to not work. Oops, I didn't curve it very well. Now that they have kids, they choose to not work. Again, this is not everybody. This is just some people. Okay, some people will stay in the market, but some people will leave. So two different ways to model it. You can model it as the wage going down, or you can model it as it just taking a big chunk out of your check, and so your wage doesn't change, but it does shift down your total earnings. And both of these are totally reasonable ways to model it. But either way, the prediction is the same, and that's that childcare will tend to have a negative, childcare costs will tend to have a negative effect on labor force participation. And if women are the primary ones responsible for the childcare, it'll have a bigger effect on them than it does on men.